I'm going to be speaking about irony, and ironically, I have a number of images that will distract from my paper on irony, but, as it were. On July 26th, the New York Times declared that due to the functioning of our media and how this affects our socio-political aesthetics, and I would add, coupled with recent historic events, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, Trumpism, and COVID, a vast epidemic of ideological viruses, fake news, paranoid conspiracy theories, explosive racism, riddled in contradiction and chaos, we are now craving a sense of empathy, connectedness, catharsis, and as such have entered into a new socio-aesthetic epoch marked by the death of irony. It alleged that because of the internet and its inability to adequately communicate tone, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Insta urges an us versus them attitude, a passionate uplifting or vehement condemnation, or as Siva said on Friday night, exacerbated by algorithmic amplification makes you really super happy or super mad. And I add, due to the very design of mobile devices, electronic technologies, TV, and online media, though not only their speed, which leaves no time for reflection, but through a barrage of alerts sells us a sense of airsat significance, is a source of endless distraction, thwarts our ability to focus, analyze, filter, or synthesize information, and instead short circuits our thinking, rendering us, as Eva Berger pointed out yesterday, context blind, without patience or ability to sift through complex dialogue. And thus, the article asserted irony has taken a back seat, and contemporary art is marked by sincerity, sentimentality, affect. From ancient Greek, irony, from ironia and Plato's iron, literally means dissimulation, often saying the opposite of what it seems to be saying. It functions as a kind of semantically complex double talk. And through invasion, abrasion, and with rapid oscillation between multiply signifying conflictual levels of discourse, marks a schism between different orders of meaning, often exposing the dark underbelly of being, flaunting its scars, pussing scabs, wounds, and then laughing at it. But what happens when this nuanced perspective is ripped away and all that's celebrated is a sense of fake sincerity? Like other overarching unproblematized universals grounded in a transcendental teleology of metaphysical constructs like truth, authenticity, closure, which lead to reductive, essentialist thinking, the unintentional consequence, the inconvenient truth of this purported new trend in both art, media, and academia is a closing down of discourse, a curtailing of communication. But given that in the wake of BLM and Me Too and the context and given our context blind environment, these disenfranchised voices, stories, characters need to be heard. How then does one simultaneously embrace a sense of irony, but riddled with empathy? How is it even possible? When irony seems to operate through a sense of detachment, alienation, and empathy proffers a sense of connection, when these modes of communication seem oppositional, dichotomous, and irreconcilable. However, read through a Korzybskian consciousness of obstruction and McLuhan's theory of extensions, I'd like to posit that irony actually functions in an all-at-onceness of both connection and disconnection, empathy and detachment, and as such can offer a discursive model needed for this present moment, providing, excuse me, providing not an over sentimentalized discourse, which glosses over darkness, tragedy, and discomfort, but rather one that is dislocating, subversive, and full of affect, and thereby underscores how modes of complex communicative strategies problematize the foundations of systemic infrastructures crucial for transformation and change. Like the abstractive thinking inherent in McLuhan's probes, as an incongruously based multi-ordinal system, irony operates through waves of association and dissociation, explodes in the aporia between expectation and arrival, awakening the recipient by saying the unsayable, speaking the unspeakable, opening up pathways for new ways of perceiving. Its very structure simultaneously draws one in close and then alienating or distancing, is reminiscent of the Kabbalistic concept of tzimtzum, a continual process of expansion and contraction as new world states of being are continually created. In sexual terms, it mirrors the process of passionately intense erotic connectedness and then an abrupt withdrawal, a pulling out. Thus, through a dialectical process of drawing the receiver in and then subverting normative rules of communication, coupled with strategies of excess, dialogism, punning, polyphony, hyperbole, parody. Aha. Contradiction, juxtaposition, revision, inversion, elision, derision, irony inverts dominant societal, theological, or political orders and instead invokes the carnivalesque, or what Bakhtin might call a grotesque realism. In general semanticist terms, can produce a serious, affective, and semantic shock, startled into awareness by bumping up against the defamiliarized familiar. Common sense is disrupted, the unexpected is evoked, and the receiver is forced to become conscious of their own cultural assumptions. And in the words of Beckett, this is the laugh, the intellectual laugh, the mirthless laugh, the laugh laughing at the laugh of all that is often unhappy. Rousing us out of a somnambulant state of complacency, the ironic laugh is the laugh of the laugh, slaughtering the body and the body politic. Read through McLuhan's The Extensions of Man, laughter is an extension of the body, convulsive like a release, a sneeze, a sob, an orgasm. There's a loss of control, leading to a sense of euphoria, jouissance. For Wyndham Lewis, the brain-body snort of exultation and screams out, as Descartes points out in Passions of the Soul, with a corporeal response, a muscular phenomenon of spasmodic contractions and relaxations of the facial muscles, with corresponding movements in the diaphragm, larynx, epiglottis, interrupts breathing and emits an inarticulate, explosive voice, a celebration, aberration of connection, disconnection, which hurts when it's happening and hurts when it's over, and marked by both Bataillean excess and Lacanian desire. It's toxically addictive. Ironically, homophonically read, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph. Aleph. And like how irony contains multiplicitous logic systems, a polyphony of reference, according to Kabbalistic hermeneutics, Aleph contains all the other letters within it, formed by two yuds and a vav. Those are two other letters within the letter, or indexically speaking, a bifurcated quote and a dash. Aleph's bodily structure then signifies both a general semanticist notion of non-allness and a media-ecological sense of all-at-onceness. Containing all the letters, it resists being reduced to a sense of overarching absolutism, but highlights itself as an infinitely abstracted construct. Further, as Hebrew is read left to right, transliterated from English, the first and last letters of the Aleph, A-H, literally say ha. Thus, a laugh of Aleph is inscribed in the letter of the letter that contains all the letters, meaning and being. And if, according to Jewish mystical thinking, the Aleph is the name of God, read in this way, God's presence, non-presence is represented as a kind of ironic humor. Now, Terry, that is an aha moment. This sense of ironic laughter is further highlighted in Talmudic hermeneutics in the story of Avraham and Sarah, who, when Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90, were told that they were going to have a child. Not only was their response to laugh in Genesis 18:13-15, but they named their child Yitzchak, which literally means, and he laughed. This sense of laughter is further underscored in that when Yitzchak was born, God added an H to each of their names. Sarah became Sarah with an H, and Abraham became Avraham with an H, literally adding a ha to their names. But I digress. As an unconscious release, this ironic laughter is especially significant as refusing a Cartesian split. It collapses not only the body and the mind, the physical, metaphysical, but the self and the other. For drawing on Ben Johnson's 1598 discussion of the four humors, according to Freud, black bile, melancholia, is born from the subject splitting off from itself and becoming an object. Alienated from itself, it becomes an abject object, marked by darkness, tragedy, pain. It is this very splitting off, abjection, distancing from oneself that irony is marked by. And as such, this dark humor, this humor noir, highlights an intricately complex relationship between self and other, asking us how it's even possible to fully and empathetically connect to the other when one is always already separate from oneself, a self of others, an intersubjective heteroglossic enunciative process continually woven through a spectral range of socio-historical, political, economic, and ethnic, geographic, or gendered codes, inscribed in difference, divergence, infinitely divisible, uncontainable, spectrally inaccessible, and tangentially, reminding us also when all's in utterance, a great impression, a la Baudrillard, Benjamin, everything is simulacric, inscribed in repetition, reproduction, traces, specters, shadows. And thinking through ways irony operates through language and transgression, how it causes the recipient to drop their defenses. And in that moment of weakness, which Beckett terms the syntax of weakness, pounces. Underscored by Deleuze, who posits in Venus infers that the masochistic relationship to law and prohibition is essentially humorous, operating through dislocated locutions, elisions, collisions, schisms, collusions, abstraction. Irony opens up a space of difference, asking one, to reevaluate our relationship to language, power, media, meaning, and being, highlighting a general semanticist notion of the structural differential, how when human remains unconscious of abstraction, their semantic reactions are bound to animalistic behaviors. Irony wards against the impetus to gloss over with big-hearted, inoffensive sentimentality, asking us to go in deep and question the invisible systems within which we have been imprisoned, thus clinging to a Korzybskian consciousness of abstraction while simultaneously, oh, what happened? Was it on? Okay. Oh, sorry, wait, just hold. Oh, well, whatever. We're gonna have to watch it. There you go. I get too excited and I closed it. Thus clinging to a Korzybskian consciousness of abstraction, while simultaneously celebrating Aristotelian pathos with a Nietzschean pathos of distance, perhaps can help us through this moment of upheaval, ushering us into a new epoch, one that highlights a sense of Heideggerian Gewordenheit, how do you say that? Gewordenheit, thrownness, where we are thrust up against our tragedy, frustrations, sufferings, demands, and through this acceptance, embrace the complexity, not live in a sense, in a state of non-nuanced communication, but rather affirm how the language of irony, like fantasies or dreams, are acts of abstractions, and offer a distancing that both revels in and reveals our shared realities. like the technologically focused, socially and politically motivated aesthetic shifts from Dada to surrealism, Italian and Russian futurism, fluxus, vorticism, situationism, modernism, postmodernism, to the electronic age of the contemporary avant-garde. We are in a moment of change, largely engendered by our technopolitical mediatic reliance, driving the ways we now construct meaning and establish value. So whether it's Sid Caesar's double talking, implying a bilinguistic double consciousness, Horlick, Carlin, Fran Lebowitz, Bill Maher, Jon Stewart, John Oliver, Stephen Colbert, Marty Levinson, or Swiftian, ferocious and funereal pleasantry, modestly proposing that the English eat little Irish children with their cauliflowers. Ironic humor asks us to view the world awry and return us to everyday realities by estranging them. And in the wake of the coronavirus epidemic, this is especially significant because language is a virus spreading like contagious bacilli, a living organism of parasitation and exploitation. And if, as per Charles Bernstein, lies thrive when irony dies, where truth is, irony's alive. I am sorry, New York Times. Irony should not take a back seat, but rather can continue to teach us about the ongoing communicative models that in general semanticist terms offer structural and semantic changes in one's character and mental capacities, where we, a la Heidegger, get thrown into ourselves, faced with the ever uncanniness of the other. Thanks.